Call to order a regular meeting of the Planning Commission. Phyllis, roll call.
Chairperson Bob McCool.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Lisa Ritchie.
Here.
Commissioners Phyllis Harden here, Jerry Malia,
Here.
Robert Momartz, Jason Reese,
Here.
Jim Sawtell, Anthony Stewart,
Here.
Steve Woody,
Here.
Planner Stephen Williams,
Here.
Attorney Hillary Graham.
Here.
Okay.
All right, next on the agenda is a public comment on the consent agenda or non-agenda items. So we do have a public hearing tonight, so public comment on that item will be taken later, but if you have any comments for the Planning Commission outside of that, please come on up and speak. If not, all right. We'll continue on. So on the consent agenda, we have the minutes from the January 16th, 2018 meeting, and we also have minutes for the March 6th, 2018 minutes. Does anybody have any changes to those?
No.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda and the minutes.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right. Commissioner Ritchie and Trustee Whitty, or Commissioner Whitty.
Thank you. And then all in favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
And one.
Abstain.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, so that takes us on to a public hearing and adoption of resolutions recommending approval of a plan development amendment, a replat of Tract A, and a final development plan for development of an electrical vehicle sales and service center. Phyllis, you have proof of publication?
I do? Yes, I do.
Okay. I think at that point, staff presentation?
Yeah, Stephen Williams, town staff. I'll just, I guess, provide a little quick overview of how we'll organize the meeting. So I'll start with the presentation, and then I'll turn it over to the applicant to introduce themselves and introduce their design team, and they'll go over the specific tenant user, and then we'll get into the 3D model at the end. So, I mean, you're always welcome to interrupt me, but it might be best to kind of get information from everybody and kind of see everything before we start getting into the broader picture questions. And then it's also kind of come to my attention that I probably should have given you guys a little bit more background on the kind of culmination of this application, which is, started in the fall with the town board kind of agreeing to a purchase and sale agreement with the applicant for this particular user in this particular location. So sorry that was not clear, but that's also been on part of the parks plan shown as a development site for this area once kind of additional studies for the drainage pond that currently sits there revealed that it was redundant and could be eliminated. So that kind of sets the tone for the whole application. But I'll get into the details of it. As Chairman McCool stated, this is a combined application that includes an FDP, a replat, and a final development plan for an electric vehicle and sales service center within downtown Superior. The primary applicant, Game Creek Holdings, is requesting approval of the final development plan on Lot 4, Block 1 within the Superior Town Center. The proposal involves a 22,000 square foot building, pictured here. Because Lot 4 has not been platted, this application also involves a replat. It's a minor subdivision to create the 2.38 acre parcel. And as the landowner, the town is also a party to this application. Lastly, because the area that will become Lot 4 is currently not designated, or is currently designated as a storm detention area within the PD also requires an amendment to allow for both developments in this area and the proposed use. So finally, the third applicant to this application is Ranch Capital in order to amend the PD. So the three required applications have been separated into two items. This sounds complicated, but it's not uncommon. The PD is just required to be done first, and it will require an ordinance when we get to the town board meeting. So, and that ordinance needs to be adopted and become effective before the FDP or the replat can be recorded. So that's kind of the impetus for the sequencing. Well, Sorry, it's a little fast mouse. Lot 4, Block 1, lies within Planning Area 1 of the Superior Town Center, southeast of where McCaslin Boulevard and Marshall Road intersect, as illustrated here. I will begin by outlining the plat and FDP proposals, and then I'll work back to the required PD amendments. Game Creek is requesting that the 2.38 acre lot be created in the northwest corner of Tract A to accommodate the proposed development. The shape of the lot was influenced by Parks 1 and 2 design, as well as the desire to limit Lot 4 as much as possible to the previous confines of the stormwater detention area, which is known as Pond 11 and encompasses roughly 1.9 acres of the site. As illustrated on the applicant's context site plan, the 2,200 square foot building is sited along McCaslin. The triangular parcel shape allows for the vehicle entrances to the site to be located as far away from the Marshall Road McCaslin intersection as possible. Off McCaslin, a right in, right out is proposed, and off Marshall, a full movement access is proposed that is in line with the westernmost access to the Element Hotel, which is currently being developed. The plan also generally illustrates the pedestrian and bicycle paths within the area and clarifies how Lot 4 will be integrated with this surrounding area, which includes the Center Point development directly north, Element Hotel, Superior Plaza to the north, and then Parks 1 and 2 to the south. The site plan provides additional detail on the development design. The building measures roughly 220 feet in length and is 100 feet wide. It is proposed to be sited lengthwise on McCaslin and sit between 12 and 20 feet from the right-of-way. This setback, however, is much greater from the right-of-way as developed. It's over 40 feet, so that's the property line there. But the applicant, as we'll see, is particularly through the landscape plan, has several off-site improvements that they'll be making as well. The building is oriented to face north with public entrances on the north side as well as the east side. Sidewalk connections to McCaslin Road, or McCaslin Boulevard, are proposed both to the north and to the south of the building. And a connection to the north across Marshall Road is also proposed and planned as part of this development. A patio area has been incorporated north of the building. The trash enclosure is sited to the south. We have proposed and kind of reserved both kind of monument signs for the project-wide development. So we don't have that detail yet from Ranch Capital, but we've reserved a spot, and that'll be reflected via an easement on the, not on the plat, but later on. That'll be detailed later. We're getting easements because the plat currently is just being platted as the parcel, and I'll get into that in a little bit. The applicant's project narrative also outlines their parking requirements, which include employee, customer, and inventory needs. The proposed site design cites the structure as far west as possible and has the building address McCaslin, which is the most prominent corridor, and it utilizes the building's long facade to screen the bulk of their parking needs. The FDP application includes 2 circulation plans illustrated here. Emergency access needs and internal building circulation are shown on the left, and the trash and recycling access as well as the vehicle delivery needs are shown on the right. As clarified in the applicant's project narrative, roughly 30% of the building is dedicated to sales and 70% is dedicated for service. This split is fairly well illustrated just by their internal circulation needs. This also informs the building elevations that we'll get into shortly. The trash and recycling services are sited to the south of the building, so that shows that they're out of the access way. And then the fire access is shown to access the north-south drive immediately east of the building, and that's where their 2 fire hydrants are also sited. The vehicular plan for vehicular deliveries is shown on the right, and so generally those trucks will come in off of Marshall, unload here in this far eastern lane, and then continue on exiting the parcel onto McCaslin. Each building elevation plan sheets reflects 2 building elevations. The proposed materials, colors, and percentage breakdowns as well as the amount of materials proposed for each facade. This sheet illustrates the building's northern and eastern facades. The primary exterior building materials include metal paneling, charred lap wood siding and glass, concrete, brake metal, as well as a natural lap wood siding are also used as accent materials on various elevations. The structure's height is best illustrated on the northern elevation here. The 32-foot, 8-inch height peak is just here. The western and eastern walls sit closer to 20 feet in height. This also kind of illustrates a lot of the architectural detail that's been incorporated, so you don't have a peak here, you have an offset roof, and this allows for the incorporation of these clear story windows facing to the east. That northern elevation is primarily defined by glass on the left and the charred lap siding on the right. The other kind of architectural element on this side is a non-90-degree wall. So we got this angled wall that kind of helps define the building's primary facade, which faces to the north. The building's eastern elevation is fairly evenly split between the materials proposed, with the metal, the charred lap siding, and glazing on the northern side. The elevations for the west and the south are shown here. Similar kind of breakdown. The buildings, this is the side that actually faces McCaslin, so we've included some windows. This is where the signage, two different signage placements are proposed to face west. And then on the south side is the kind of more service-oriented side, which is where the trash enclosure is shaded here. And that's primarily defined by the charred lapwood siding. The building's HVAC units are placed behind this tower element that's kind of been incorporated to help break up the roof line of the southern portion of the building. The applicant's proposed signage is further detailed here. Two types of signs are generally proposed. One is a tenant sign and one is a logo. The western elevation includes one sign of each type, and the eastern and northern elevations include tenant signage on each facade. The landscaping plan is illustrated here. It illustrates both on and off-site improvements are proposed. Off-site improvements are limited to town-owned property, which are within the right-of-ways for McCaslin and Marshall, and involve the applicant installing the streetscapes for these right-of-ways. There'll be a 10-foot detached sidewalk along McCaslin and an 8-foot detached sidewalk along Marshall Road. Along McCaslin, the existing utilities are pretty dense between the building and McCaslin and do impact the ability to install trees along this streetscape. But there are trees proposed within the Marshall right-of-way to the north. Foundational landscaping has been incorporated on the building's southern and western facades, and landscape islands have also been included within the parking area to the east. The applicant is also, this is all off-site, but the applicant's also proposing to install the first 10 feet or so of landscaping within Tract A. So this is part of the kind of direction from staff, was to limit the size of their site as much as possible. And then we're already going to have a bunch of landscaping within Park 1, which is within Tract A to the southeast. And so the applicant is just, instead of creating a larger site for their property in order to accommodate their screening, they're just going to landscape part of our park in order to achieve the same goal. So the plat, kind of getting to the plat, it's fairly straightforward. As I mentioned, all we're doing and all we really can do through this plat application is create the parcel, because the town is the owner of Tract A. We can't dedicate the tract or the lot to the applicant through this application. So the order is really the only complicated thing about this application. So we'll, if this is approved, we'll adopt the plat. We'll have a deed that transfers the lot 4 to the adjacent property owner, and then we'll have a series of easements that are dedicated back from the property owner once they establish ownership back to the public for the required utility easements and access easements, as well as that easement for the sign for downtown Superior in the northwest corner of the site. So finally, getting into the PD updates. We've done this kind of similar to how we've done this in the past, where we just cloud or highlight the areas that need to be changed. So the cover sheet really just emphasizes that there's only 5 sheets that are part of this application, and that this would be PD amendment number 4. Cover sheet 2, the lone change is illustrated. So this is the actual PD sheet, and the only change is to the amount of commercial floor area that's allowed within the town center. That goes up by the 22,000 square feet that this application would result in. And then the building mass diagram, I think we may have skipped one. The building mass diagram illustrated here would also shift what was previously shown as I think all right, that's the building mass diagram. Sorry. The site development plan will also be updated to reflect the revised acreage. That's all that's being done here, and the commercial use being shifted. So this was designated as a stormwater detention area previously. Now this would be a commercial use and reflect the proposed acreage split. This is the building mass diagram, I apologize. And this was previously shown here to have a 50-foot height allowance. So we're shifting that allowance from what would have been the northeast corner of Tract A to the northwest corner to accommodate their proposed use. And then the 2 updates really to the allowed uses table are to allow the electric vehicle sales and service center as an allowed use within planning area 1. And we'll update the prohibited uses to kind of clarify the electric vehicle allowance as well. I think I just had those in the wrong order. So, and then finally, this is the last, just little acreage update to update the developable acreage table to reflect the elimination of 1.9 acres worth of stormwater detention and the additional 2.38 acres worth of commercial development. So recommendation number 1 is for the PD to be adopted first, according to the technical corrections that staff has outlined to the applicant in the cover memo. And then staff recommendation number 2 is more kind of process oriented, related to the sequencing of everything. So those are those conditions. Technical corrections, the approval of the final plat and the FDP cannot be effective until the PD is recorded and approved. The final plat shall be recorded prior to the FDP, and then the sequencing that we noted about the deed being recorded, and then the easements following the deed. That's it for my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you have, either now or after the applicant's presentation.
Anybody have any questions for staff at this point? Does the applicant have a presentation? Oh, sorry. Oh,
No.
she said something.
Microphone. No, you're good. Just
She said it's okay. So, public hearing's open, we're good, right? So the applicant has a presentation?
Yes. John Hardy, Jonhardy. I'm with Game Creek Holdings. We're the applicant, the developer on the project. We're in Littleton, Colorado. That's where we're based. Thank you for taking the time to hear our application. Really appreciate it. Thank you for all your hard work, Martin, staff, everyone. Been great to work with so far on this project, so thanks for that. I'm here to, I've been authorized to reveal who our tenant is at this meeting, and that tenant is Tesla. They're from California. Everyone knows who they are, I'm presuming. I'm going to introduce in a second here a representative from Tesla who came in from California, Jimmy Chapa. But first I just want to say that I think this is a really unique opportunity for my company and for the town of Superior to have an iconic brand like Tesla come to this marketplace. They're excited to be here. I think it's gonna be a facility that draws from an extended trade area. I think even if you have people coming to look at these cars, even if they're not coming to buy them or test drive them or have them serviced, you'll have people coming from all ends of northern Colorado and maybe even Wyoming to come down and see what these cars are all about, because they're remarkable automobiles, and they just make a great product. We are on our third deal with Tesla. We did a service center and sales and delivery center down in Littleton, Colorado, at the corner of Broadway and Littleton. They opened last fall. And we just finished a deal with them in California as well. So this will be our third deal with them. They're a great company to work with. They're forward-thinking. They're progressive. I happen to, personally think that they're changing the world for the better. So with that, and also, I don't know, we'll probably get to this a little bit, but in case it's not touched on, this is not your typical service center, automobile service center. These cars don't have any oil in them. They don't have any fluids other than the windshield wiper fluid. And when you walk in, you don't have that smell or that noise that you'd have in a normal automobile dealership typical service center. It's clean, it's bright, it's quiet, it's just well run. And so I wanted to get that point out there. With that, I'll bring Jimmy up. I think you had a few words you wanted to say. And then we'll get to our design team, introduce our design team, and they can take you through the project. Thank you.
So thank you, John, and good evening, members of the planning board. My name is Jimmy Chapa. I am a design manager with Tesla Motors, the retail development team. I'm here to represent Tesla. As you know, Tesla is an electric automotive and energy storage company. Our mission is to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. We strive to achieve uncompromising approach to vehicle sales and service. Without a doubt, the greater Boulder County area is a very quickly growing market for us, and the community is very environmentally conscious. We hope that we'll be welcomed to the area. We are hoping to make this location at Superior one of the spokes of our overall strategy in the area. Just a little bit about our vehicles that John sort of touched on. They are completely electric. They are not hybrid vehicles. They don't have any gasoline transmissions, internal combustion engines. They're extremely safe to drive even indoors, as they don't have any exhaust, and repair of the vehicles does not require any storage of hazardous substances outside of basic cleaning products. That's all I've got to say. I hope you will consider our place here in Superior. Thank you.
Okay. I'm Kelly Davis with Oz Architecture. I've got Amanda and Chris with me. We've been working hard trying to balance a lot of different parameters, the site, the location in Superior, the desires of Tesla, some of the other things, and I think we're at least happy that it's not the drainage pond anymore. We think this is a far better use for this particular corner. There are a few things that I wanted to kind of point out that factored into our thinking from the beginning of this project. One was the orientation of the building and the location of the building along this western edge. We've got the really relatively high traffic McCaslin along the west side, the more local Marshall Road on the north. There's activity to the north with some of the retail development that's gone there. There is a huge amount of pedestrian traffic, both now and anticipated, that feeds across this intersection. So we've really oriented the north end of this facility to be the all-glass visual introduction to the project along the north, and then wrap that to the east. Does this work, Stephen? Sure. How about yours? Sorry, mine's a little dim. So from this prime visibility and with the interaction across to this retail and the pedestrian access, this is our glass north end that you saw in some of the images, and you'll see again, and that glass turns the corner. So in our parking lot, we currently have visitor and employee parking along the building front, accessed from Marshall or from McCaslin. And then as Stephen enumerated, our service is a direct shot along this arc. All of this parking along the edge of the park and in the body of this field is inventory storage. So these are cars that come and go at various times for delivery and sales as people who visit the showroom order them. So most of this is pretty stationary for most of the time, and the activity occurs right around this north and eastern edge. We wanted to be good neighbors to the park, so Stephen mentioned, but I think it's worth emphasizing that we've really invested in our first phase of this to create that buffer and that sort of transition from the vehicle storage to the activity of the park as that comes online. And then you can see the heavy landscape vegetation of the islands, the enhanced streetscape, somewhat mirroring what's on the other side of Marshall, and then a really heavily layered landscape along this pedestrian experience on the west side of the building. So as we talk about the orientation, this is being the view from the intersection of Marshall and McCaslin. You see our north end with our front porch sort of activity that allows the in and out, the transparency of the showroom, allowing the activity to be seen. We also created these sort of what I would call like storefront window peekaboos that allow you to see the activity that's going on within the service bays and the cars going back and forth from this pedestrian connection along McCaslin. Some additional windows, and we were very sensitive to trying to, as Stephen said, it's a 210 or so foot long building, and we didn't want that to be a monolithic 200-foot long facade. So that's why the angles, the angled vertical wall, the pitched roof, creating this frame for this public activity, highlighted by the transparency of the glass, and then a little bit more of the service aspect on the south end, but still breaking that up with windows and vertical features to avoid that repetitive long facade. As he mentioned, the materiality of this project has been interesting for us because Tesla, being probably the epitome of 21st century technology company, the idea of them being in Colorado and particularly located in Superior, we think is a great opportunity for all of us as designers, as residents of Superior, to really celebrate the idea that we like having this 21st century technology in this direction. So we wanted to be sensitive to the overall character of Superior and a lot of the town planning that's going into our south on the other side of the park. But we wanted it to reflect the corporate culture and the direction that Tesla is going. So rather than replicate masonry forms and stucco cementitious forms, we went the other way, and we started to replicate really durable, high-quality technology forms and materiality. So that's why we're into the glass, the dark color of the wood, and the standing seam metal roof that not only wraps the roof, but down the walls and the concrete base. So from this is the northeast view where you see all the activity, this lantern effect of the glazed showroom element on the north end facing this ring road of Marshall and the intersection of Marshall and McCaslin. This is the assignment of the materials, but I think I kind of described them. I think sometimes it's hard for us to make the leap from our architectural renderings to actual materials. So, and Stephen, you have this, so if you wanted to print this sheet where people could actually see it maybe a little sharper, that would be fine. But the primary materials are this charred wood, this natural material, but in a colored way that is adds warmth and texture and natural Colorado feeling to it, while still being modern and contemporary in the vocabulary of the overall building. The standing seam metal roof, which you can see, in examples like this, how that wraps not only the roof but the side of the material. Same thing here. I think this also starts to give you a little bit of insight into what we're doing, where we have a relatively short vertical wall. The overall height is a little misleading because it's got this dramatic slope back to the pitch of the roof. And then rather than a unitized concrete block or some other base material, we wanted to put this really clean concrete base that occurs back here as the wainscot and termination along for durability and for weather with the landscape up against it along the base of this metal siding. So I'm happy to answer questions. I know I just kind of spewed a lot at you, but there's a big idea here that we're pretty excited about, and Tesla's been very encouraging and excited about. I feel it really represents them, and I think it helps celebrate this company in this place, and it gives us yet another element to this intersection that helps transition to the park and then on into the actual town center. So I'll leave this up, but we can happy to come back and answer questions or.
Are there any questions of the applicant?
I have a question. One of my concerns when I look at the size of this, Tesla right now is a very successful company, and I'm wondering, in your long-term plans, how long do you feel like this site will be adequate for you? I worry that the site would be potentially abandoned and vacated for a larger location at some point in the future.
So unfortunately, I don't have kind of our real estate numbers for this site. I do know I've worked on several projects of this scale, and I know we've planned for at least a 10-year lifespan. And willing, if Tesla's still doing well at the time, I'm sure we would definitely look at the option to renew our stay.
Sorry, Stephen, I forgot the.
Oh, no, it's fine. Whenever you guys want to get to it, we can show the 3D model.
Do you have a 3D?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do that first,
Okay,
I think.
sure.
I think that'll answer some questions.
So this is coming in from the south. And we have a different video that comes in from the north, too, if you guys want to see the approach from Highway 36. But I think Chase gets a little of that here at the end of this one. He's on a plane right now, so he couldn't be here tonight. You want to see the other one, or I don't know that it shows much else. But
That's good.
okay.
Questions?
Unfortunately, I feel like that 3D model didn't do a service for the Tesla building, showing the facades being in kind of a beige or yellow. It kind of was distracting to me. But one of the views I wanted to see really was from the park looking back up to the building, and then not only that, but I'd like to see kind of an elevation from the park looking at the building, so we could actually understand, because I believe it's about a 10-foot drop from the parking surface to the bottom, the main level of the park, and I think that would be very important for everybody to understand when you're down in the park. What is your view of the building, and what kind of impact is that? I think with the trees and everything, eventually the trees will mature and become part of the entire project. But I really feel like the view from the park looking in, and hopefully this gives us a little better. Can you drive through the park?
I mean, this is I can't drive through it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But this is kind of from that bridge that's proposed over.
Right. But I think one of the biggest points of this entire development project is going to be this park. And I just wanted to kind of understand. I think visually, I understand it as far as what kind of impact buildings will be around the entire project. But it would have been good to see from that view. I have not a lot of questions, but I'd like for you guys to jump in also if you have anything.
So I'll jump in. I may or may not be able to stick around for the vote tonight. I'm a planner in another jurisdiction, and I have an item on the agenda later this evening, so I'm going to need to take off. But I do want to get my points in the record and hopefully be able to stick around through a vote on this application. I don't necessarily have questions other than I think what is the intent from the town's perspective on potentially replacing parking for Park 1 and 2?
The direction right now is that we're exploring options south, and those kind of generally reflected on that context site plan within this application.
Okay. I do just have a number of concerns, and depending on how this goes, I think I'll just kind of read these into the record and then see what other folks have to say. I think as shared, I do have concerns with this operator's desire to remain in this location long term. I think the operator's great, but this is a pretty high-profile corner in a really unique building, and I just would hate to see we kind of approve this development that's really specific to this one particular user and have you guys not be here long term and committed to the town. And I also would want to note that this use potentially could allow any EV sales and service, not just Tesla. So I think, from the zone change, from the PD amendment perspective, I think just kind of noting that, maybe Nissan or maybe Ford or somebody else comes here in the future. From an auto use perspective, just from an automobile dealership, independent of the, improved environmental considerations related to this, I do have concerns, though, that we're putting such a heavily auto-oriented use, clearly, right next to a park. It's just not walkable. It's potentially is safe for folks accessing this park. We're potentially going to have test drives and folks in and out, so I just kind of want to note that. From the building architecture, I think this facade right here is great. I love the angled roof. I love the clear story windows. I love the wall of glass. I love that you're going to see that when you approach from the north. I have a lot of concerns related just to the west facade as well as the southwest corner as you're approaching from the south toward the north. I do feel like this building absolutely is turning its back on McCaslin. While I appreciate the 3 storefront windows, I don't think that goes near enough to addressing kind of the streetscape along McCaslin. So I appreciate the orientation toward the park and all of that, but the way this particular elevation lines up is, I feel like we could do better on that facade. But I do appreciate that we're accommodating user and a tenant that's strongly desired by the town board. I understand we already have a purchase and sale agreement, and the board is highly motivated, as I understand it, to see this user come in. I like the company. I'm very supportive of the direction they're going. I think that, that they're doing a lot to facilitate creative and new technologies, and I'd love to see them be a part of the town of Superior. I just have some concerns related to this particular location and the way the building is oriented.
And most people want to focus on questions. I want to give
Mike.
Commissioner Ritchie a little leeway since she needs to leave. But sorry, my mic's not on. So at this point, just probably more questions for the applicants regarding their presentation, or I guess even for staff if questions have come up. Yes, I'm Anthony.
Yes, I do have a couple questions and a couple concerns that I'd like to put on the table as well. First, I'd like to kind of echo and get more clarification on what Commissioner Ritchie is saying about commitment to our community in general, not just the longevity of and the life of the dealership, but also are there plans to engage the community around several and various projects, like becoming a member of the Chamber of Commerce, supporting some of the school activities, things like that, or if this is just an opportunity to come in, get a good site, and build this business here. So that's one of the questions I have is how can we assure that your company is going to be committed to our community?
I can feel that as well. Go ahead. I'll just give it.
In terms of actual community activities, I'm not sure how much I can promise. One thing I'll say is that the showrooms within the Tesla service centers are very educational. There's quite a lot of information about sustainable energy, solar panels, lithium batteries for homes, and the car technology itself. In fact, most of the showroom is really dedicated to educating our customers because we are really kind of a new technology. I mean, a lot of our retail showrooms are within malls, which is not really a dealership. Nobody's going to drive a car out of our mall showrooms, but there really are just kind of an education piece for the technology itself that we would hope that the town of Superior could make use of. I don't know if the school could set up anything, a bit of a tour or something like that, but that's an opportunity there.
I can elaborate on that.
You could come to the
I'm
microphone.
John Power. I'm part of the applicant, with the applicants. I can't speak on behalf of Tesla. I do not work for Tesla. I've just done work for Tesla. We've done projects, like John said, in Littleton and in California. We were also working on projects in other cities. What I can tell you is they're very focused on community reach out. There's a gentleman that we've met with several times that is interested in getting programs going with schools. I can't promise you that they'll do it here. I know there's a supercharging team that is interested in getting superchargers, for example, in park locations. That is not a commitment. You hear that? It's not a commitment, but I know they're out there looking for sites because they've asked us. So I think there is ample opportunity to reach out to Tesla, and they will be a fantastic neighbor. That's my experience with Tesla. And in terms of longevity, I can tell you that the investment in this property is enormous. To get the infrastructure in here to charge cars is an enormous investment. So I can't imagine that they would go anywhere. And when you look at the retail landscape now, I mean, is there any retailer out there that you would? I mean, I don't want to go through the list, but this is a fantastic technology. Everything's moving in that direction. And I think it's a fantastic use for Superior.
Yeah, I want to elaborate on that, on the staying power. They have signed a 10-year lease with us, 3 5-year options to renew. We hope they're here for a minimum of 25 years. We think they will with this significant investment that they're making in this building. I view Tesla, and this is my personal opinion. You can, everyone has their own opinion about Tesla, but I view them as a disruptor. I don't see them being disrupted like other retailers. I think Walgreens is disruptible. Amazon's going to go after Walgreens, CVS. If you put a CVS on this corner, are they there in 8-10 years? I don't know. I think I put my money on Tesla over our traditional retailers. We've been a preferred developer for a lot of drugstores, and I'm not sure that I want to build those anymore. I'm not sure they're going to be around in 15 years. I think Tesla will be.
What'd you say the lease term was again? I'm sorry.
A 10-year primary term with 3 5-year options to renew.
Walgreens, their business depends on candy sales.
You need to step up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're going to say. They depend on the front of the house, candy sales, and all those. You can get all that stuff on Amazon now. Everyone's having it delivered to their front door. I still go to Costco. I still go to Target. I'm not bagging on all those retailers. I think there's a place for them, but do we need another drugstore in Colorado? I don't think so. I don't want to build another one.
I've had John and I have been to the factory in Fremont for a tour, and we've also been to the Gigafactory. What I can tell you is it is amazing what they're doing. It is incredible. When you're in seeing it, watching it all happen, it is just really special. And so I hope if I could take all of you up to Fremont and go to for the factory tour, it would be you would just be blown away at what's happening. So I would encourage you to really look at the future and not look in the past at what retail was. This is the future.
So
And again, this is primarily questions. We still have public comment that needs to come forward, so primarily questions for the applicant at this point.
Is there a solar component to this? Anything PV or thermal involved in the structure?
Not as of yet, but in the lease it allows for Tesla to build their own solar. They're doing their own panels. They have a utility scale power storage capability. So I can't tell you what their plans are for it. I can tell you that it's not designed in this building. We did do one in a project recently in California, so I know that they do it. I can't speak to I won't speak on their behalf. But my guess is it would make financial sense to incorporate solar at some point.
But currently, it is not designed for solar panels now. This is just your traditional roof.
Yeah, Mr. Chopra, is there anything from Tesla? He mentioned that Tesla has their own panels.
We do manufacture and sell our own panels, and the showroom will have an energy component for customers who'd like to invest in solar energy for their homes. Right now, as a kind of a global move, we haven't started incorporating solar panels into the service centers themselves. As John mentioned, we do have superchargers that incorporate them today. We are looking at hopefully retrofitting and also moving forward with solar panels in the future for all service center projects.
So you said there's an aspect where Tesla could sell shares of let's say a solar farm to customers who'd be interested in that?
Right now, the technology we produce and sell to customers is solar panels for their homes, as well as the kind of home battery for powering your home, kind of taking your home off of the grid. Mm-hmm. That's currently what we have in the energy department. I know that's expanding. A lot of that is stuff that I'm not really privy to be honest, as part of the retail development team, but we are expanding pretty rapidly in those areas.
Okay, so that would be one of the offerings?
It is, yeah. This showroom will have an energy component with sales for energy.
So getting a little more on the material side, the lap siding, I was in Omaha years ago and pulled up to a Starbucks, and it had the wood lap siding, just beautiful product. 3 years later, I drove into the drive-thru, and it was sun-faded, a lot of issues, and I believe that our sun, the impact of the sun here in Colorado versus what it is in Omaha is probably tenfold, and just want to make sure that the charred wood siding, the lap siding is a product that is tested and we're not going to wind up seeing any issues 3 years down the road, 4 years down the road. And what kind of maintenance program would you have on that?
You are correct. Wood is tough in Colorado. It's partly why this Japanese product with the charred wood has become, I won't say popular because it's still relatively new. We just finished a project in Silverthorne, the Performing Arts Center, where we used some of this product. We can vary how black it is versus how brown it reads, but that burned, sort of charred exterior is what gives it that UV protection and helps it hold up and become more durable than a normal natural exposed wood, relying on sealers and finish to be continuously applied to try and combat that, because you are correct, the solar impact can be tremendous, and I think that's one of the reasons, that we think this is a good alternative to bring some of that wood and warmth to the project and still provide it with the kind of durability that we're all looking for all the materials in this building.
Just one question about disruptive technologies, because I think if you would have thought 30 years ago about Walgreens and stuff, you might not have thought that. What about self-driving cars and the impact they're going to have on the automobile industry? That everyone's not going to have two cars in their driveway because they're going to have self-driving cars and people driving people around instead of going to buy cars. So I look at that and say that's the disruptive technology that's going to take down automotive industry and make the total. So do you have any thoughts about that?
I'd say Tesla's the leader in the space. I have no idea what's going to happen with autonomous driving. I sure hope it gets here because I rode up with John, and so I can't speak to that. But I can tell you that Tesla is focused on it, and I would say they're one of the leaders, technology leaders in that. And so if I were concerned about that being a disruptor, I want to ride with the leader. So. But I'm definitely not an expert on self-driving cars.
So our Model 3 car has just launched. All of those cars have come standard with the autopilot feature, which is a little bit of a beta phase for the kind of autonomous driving, which is definitely something that Tesla is heavily investing in. What I will say about kind of the threat that the building would cease to need to function with autonomous driving is that the most trafficked area of this will be the showroom. And now when people buy cars, they really want to see, touch, feel, sit in the car. I personally don't have any reservations that part of the car buying experience will go away. So I know that the showroom component will definitely hopefully stay alive and busy. Now the service, ideally, I think it would be great for your car to take itself into service. Now those areas of the service center that are being used for auto service are not going to be trafficked by customers regardless. So if it were just a bunch of technicians and cars that were driving themselves in for service, something like this, I think that would actually even be better for congestion and things of that nature.
So I think my next couple of questions will be more for the design team, kind of going on Commissioner Ritchie's comments on the western facade, the three windows, picture windows, basically. I feel like that's a great attempt to break up that facade, but I also, and I'm all for branding, but I also feel like that the reason that there aren't more of those along that side is to make room for this large-scale Tesla branding. And so I feel like there's potential there to continue to break up that facade while keeping the branding, even at that size. I don't know what that is, but I think, from a design aspect, I think the team has done a really good job at presenting this this product. I really like the way it looks. I think we're a forward-thinking town, and hopefully, something like this, it would fit into the fabric of our town. But I really feel like that western facade needs something else to kind of break it up. But I still believe that the Tesla brand can be represented while something else is done. And maybe it's higher, maybe it's lower. I really like the concrete, and it doesn't really come through in several the facades that we're looking at, or the perspectives, is the polished concrete, or just the nice concrete wainscoting. You can't even tell it in this this view, right? But I think that there's a lot of potential there. So I think that that's something that the design team could look at to kind of help break that up and still keep the branding.
Any other questions?
Just one other thing that I have. What is the footprint of this entire project? Are we talking about using 2.3 acres, or is there a percentage of that, or what's the scale, I guess?
Of the development?
Yes.
I mean, of the building itself?
The building and the parking.
Well,
22,000 feet, and the site is 2.3 acres and change.
the building is 22,000 feet on 2.63 acres.
3.8.
2.38 acres.
And then with parking?
Trying to do my math. Is the rest of this?
15% of the area.
Sorry. Just tell me.
Yeah, 15% of the area in our site is landscaped, and
Okay.
then an additional 14% out of that.
15% of the site, because I didn't do the math, but 15% of the site area that's left over then is landscaped area.
And then an additional 14% site.
Oh, an additional 14% off-site
Of landscape.
of landscaping. So if we go back, or Stephen, do you have mine? Or
Yeah, it's here in this table. So it's included on the cover sheet. There's a
That's the-
breakdown of
around the arc.
the acreage distribution,
Yep.
hard surface and
Okay.
everything.
I think that what's confusing there is of the balance of the acreage that's not building. So whatever 2.38 times is in square feet minus 22,000 square feet of that area, 15% of that area is landscaped. But then there's an additional 14% equivalent that we're providing in landscape. It's just occurring outside the boundaries of our site. So along McCaslin, along Marshall, and along the edge of the park. So if you wanted to think about it that way, that's 29% of our remaining site area worth of landscape that we have.
Can I just follow up with Stephen's back? Can I just follow up with Stephen? So we have open space requirements typically. What are they for?
So that was
I'm
kind of
reading
the-
that that's not really built in here. They're using land outside the property and calling that open space. Can you speak to what the what is the actual percent of open space on their property?
The actual percent of landscaped area on their property is close to 14%.
Whatever it is we define as open space, either in the PD or in requirements. We have open space requirements for these developments. Can you, for whatever that is, can you speak to what they have on their property?
They have 14% of landscaped area. That's typically what we're looking at. And then they have an additional almost 15% of offsite area that's landscaped. And that's based on their parcel size. So overall, they're providing nearly 29,000 square feet of landscape improvements.
Well, that's not, that's my, so the question is the open space, what is our normal requirement for a development? I get that they're doing some stuff. I just want the
So
numbers.
we don't
I
have,
don't want
the
dancing around
PD
this.
itself doesn't have a percentage that says that it has
Okay.
to do this. It's just like when you have certain requirements for landscaping of a parking area and that type of stuff. And for this one, and that's what I was trying to clarify in my application, is we're trying to strike a balance between not expanding their lot. We didn't want to exchange private landscaping within a parking area for, and sacrifice park space immediately adjacent to it. So we wanted to keep the confines of this site as tight as we could. And that was, this back and forth with the applicant about what they need for their development, and then we didn't want to provide, like a redundant buffer landscape on that southeast side when the park's effectively going to be landscaped anyway. So instead, they're providing a certain amount of landscaping off-site, which we normally wouldn't require within Tract A in order to achieve the same purpose.
Okay.
So how much of an, and maybe it's not, how much of an impediment is this property into parcel A
So
from what was originally proposed?
So 1.9 acres is the detention area, and then we have about 0.48 acres additional to accommodate this site, and more or less, if you guys remember the FDP for Parks 1 and 2, this takes up the pond site plus the parking area that was planned immediately southeast of the pond. So it's effectively the same shape, and that was part of the direction that we had to kind of keep that shape. And also, I think the site benefits for a number of reasons. It wasn't like the intent when we set out to it, but I think that you look at the access points being as far away from that intersection; those are critical things. And we only get that when you have a triangular shaped parcel that allows those to be as far east and as far south as possible, and then you don't take up more of the park by creating a rectangle piece where you don't need it. It makes it a little bit harder for the site designers, I think, to incorporate all their parking and that type of stuff. But that was the direction, and that was the balance that we were trying to strike.
So I think going way back to when ProStack or when we had some community meetings and we cut out baseball fields and tennis courts and just moved everything around on a map and what everybody had hoped for in a proposed park. One of them was not necessarily a dedicated baseball, softball field type thing, but at least somewhere where you could throw down the bases and everything. And the way that it was originally planned, it looks like is now where the retention pond would be. Is that?
Yeah, and I don't.
It was a while ago. So.
Yeah, I mean, so there will be some changes to the park. I don't think that, and I haven't been involved in those discussions. That's primarily, being led by our pros director. But from what I gather, the park changes aren't going to be substantial, and the amenities that were proposed there. There's going to be some adjustments and possibly adjustments to locations, but and I kind of want to encourage you, that those are all off-site impacts, and this application is limited to Lot 4. So
right, but it's an impact to.
I understand.
Yes.
Yeah, so.
Is there any shared parking being provided, or is Tesla helping?
There's no
with any
shared
of the
parking proposed as part of this application. No.
Okay. So it's just consuming all the parking we had for the park.
And we're looking at alternative sites to the south for that parking. So it would be within coming from the planning area 2, so off of Coal Creek Drive. There would be some sort of parking element that is incorporated.
Okay. And then based off of the parking allotment, I think it was 172 spots. I mean, they were looking at
That's what's proposed for the
72
site.
proposed sites. So the number of cars that you will have.
That's more for them.
What's that?
A question for them, you're asking?
Yes. This will be a question for you guys directly. So 172 parking spots on this proposal. Out of that, how many spots are you really looking to dedicate for inventory? And
so we've calculated 77 based on your own standards for the actual use, the visitors, the employees, and the service functions. The balance would be inventory storage.
Can you give us a number of how many spaces you're
77
planning for inventory?
70, well, 172 minus 77, 95.
90, yeah. So 95. So
170 minus 77, so 93 in inventory. 77. We'll see how. I mean, that's based on your zoning standard for the use. So there's 77 dedicated, including handicap accessible spaces.
Okay, so of your inventory, going years 1 through 5 or something, and these are really projections for Tesla, I guess, would be, do you expect to have all of those parking spaces utilized, or is there a potential that we could reduce the amount of parking spots for inventory, but have more trucks come. And I don't want to open this, but having more trucks come in during the week too. And so it's a smaller inventory space, but more rotation of your product coming in and out. I'm just thinking outside the box on the parking.
So I unfortunately can't give any direct numbers. What I'll say is I think those calculations were done with kind of the use standard. What I'll say about Tesla is we actually typically do not have inventory cars for sale on the lot. Pretty much all cars are custom designed by customers. They're delivered to the property same day or the day before for delivery. This service location is going to have 2 delivery bays for customer delivery cars. So we have trucks that deliver up to 7 cars at a time. I envision that will probably happen every 2 to 3 days. One truck will deliver inventory cars.
So why do we need 93 parking spaces? I am just blown away by the amount of asphalt and parking. Why? I mean, if these are custom delivers, why 93 spaces for inventory? Plus, God knows, 73 for visitors with 3 to 5 people picking up cars in a day. And help me understand.
I can't answer that question. I'm required to deliver 170 parking stalls per my lease with Tesla. I think that they're planning on this facility serving a very extended trade area. I think you're going to be drawing people from all over northern Colorado to come here to test drive cars, to accept delivery of new vehicles. I will say that the pie-shaped orientation of this site plan, it's not your typical sea of parking like you'd see out in front of a Costco or a Walmart, where you just have rows and rows and rows and these huge drive lanes. It's broken up by these triangles, and we try to do a nice job of landscaping, in between so that the cars aren't just head on together. It's broken up pretty nicely, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you might be missing why we're asking, but
right.
I'm not. The expansive asphalt is there, but I mean, we're giving up a boatload of parking for this whole. I'm just trying to understand if you only need, let's call it conservative and triple his estimate, 15 deliveries of cars a day, and you're bringing those cars in 3 times a week, 2 or 3 times a week. Is this thing going to be sitting empty, or?
I don't think they want to outgrow this facility. To your point, Commissioner Ritchie, I think they want to grow into it, and I don't think every single stall is going to be utilized on 365 days of the year. But they're going to be servicing a lot of these cars. They're going to have customers all over this Boulder, MSA, Louisville, Lafayette, Broomfield, Westminster, Superior. They're going to service the cars and then bring them out to the parking lot, and the customers are going to come pick them up. So they want the room. They don't want to sign on to a 10-year commitment and run out of space.
Mm-hmm.
What's the weekend activity? I know most car dealerships in Colorado are closed on Sundays. Are you all planning on being closed on Sundays? And is there an opportunity potential for some shared parking on the weekends for park use?
I'll say a lot of our service centers are actually closed on Sundays or by appointment. I don't know actually what our service operations team is planning for this facility, unfortunately, just yet. But it's very likely we will be closed on Sundays. The potential for shared parking, I think it's very likely. I unfortunately can't promise anything, but I know that, as John said, we are hoping to not outgrow the site, so we have been asking for quite a lot of parking in our new sites, although we don't use them all right at the start.
So I guess just go ahead.
Yeah, and that's the whole reason I started bringing this up is because we do have certain locations in town that have outgrown their parking capacities, and I fully understand the number right now, but I was trying to get to the point where I understood what the expectation is for the first 5 years or something? And is there a way that we look at this and say, 20 of those spots we don't expect to be utilized at all in the first couple of years or whatever? And is there some agreement that we could have between the town and Tesla or the property owner and just say, you know what, until Tesla needs these spots, maybe it becomes parking for the park? And so I was just trying to think outside of, and help us figure out a way to provide parking for the park. But this is also for a park that is not fully developed yet and, may not be for several years.
I can certainly ask a question, and I will. But I think there's probably some liability issues with sharing parking. You come onto Tesla's property and someone slips and falls and gets hurt. It's just, I think the answer is going to be no, but I will ask the question.
Okay.
Any more questions? Any more questions?
I don't know if it's so much of a question more than a statement, but Mr. Jenks from RC Superior is not here this evening to speak to this, but I was concerned about the signage on the corner, because this is one of the entrances into our downtown Superior. And from one of those illustrations that Oz was providing, there was a red Tesla logoed sign right there near the corner, which looks great, but this is the entrance into our 156-acre downtown Superior. And so I was concerned to see any right there. Thank you, Stephen. Any illustrations of what that signage is going to look like, because I know RC Superior at one point was talking about a tower that was going to reminisce of the industrial mine that we used to have here. And that certainly wouldn't fit there, and it would be quite large in front of the building.
So, I mean, I guess all I can tell you at this point is that we've reserved a spot. I've tried to, I think RC Superior is currently working on their, total sign package for the entire development. And they've seen this application, and they want an easement for their sign. They couldn't tell me how big their sign's going to be. There's no restrictions that the applicant is asking for on the size or anything like that. It'll need to be incorporated with the landscaping plan as we get those details, and we're still working on those. But the request was as large of an easement area as we can allow. And it certainly, I think, the rendering that you saw, the 3D rendering, is simply a placeholder. The sign will likely be much more prominent, and Tesla's sign, I've encouraged them to have a more prominent sign there too. So,
sorry to interrupt. Are you talking about the town of the Superior Marketplace sign or whatever it's going to be?
Downtown Superior.
Yeah, we're open. We're open to suggestions on size and materials, and it's just a placeholder right now.
Okay. Yeah, I just put it into the comments for the Board of Trustees to understand that's a highly important corner.
Yeah, and we're mindful of it. I mean, we're keeping an easement, and if I'd had more specificity if RC had more specificity to share, we'd have provided it, but it's just they're not syncing up application-wise or detail-wise. Yeah.
So I think the Oz has done a great job designing the architecture, and I've seen lots of their work over the years. They're very, very good. And so I think there's enough logo space on the building itself to, if that was the illustration that they're going to run with.
Well, I think it's just, if you look at the drawing, the town of Superior has a really large sign, and then the tenant monument is just a very small portion of that off to the side. So I don't think it's anything that's...
I don't think it's on this one.
No.
Where's the oblique?
Yeah, but that doesn't show the town. Oh, well.
Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about.
Than what
you
it
got
shows
Tesla
on the plan.
side of the building. That's very obvious. Where if that's where you need to go, that's where you're going.
It's funny, on the plan version, it looked a lot different.
Well, and it's smaller.
So,
I mean, I've actually encouraged that sign to get bigger, and it got a little bit bigger. But that's just one of the things is you typically, a sign package isn't proposed until really fleshed out till like the last minute, and then somebody asked me for some additional sign area. So in order to ward that off, we enlarged that sign, and we also included a sign band area for the north side. So they'll have some options, and we'll reserve the it's a good point. We'll reserve the downtown Superior sign, and it won't be as small as it's shown in this rendering.
Great. Thank you.
So,
And then I
okay,
just have
do you have,
one-
do you have another question? And again, this is focused on questions rather than comments, but do you have questions?
I have
Fire
a
on.
question.
Yeah.
What I thought I heard someone say is that the landscaping on the west side of the building is going to be layered landscaping. What does that mean? Is that low to the ground? Is there no landscaping to block that building from original town?
So the intent is that from the building facade toward the sidewalk, the buildings, the plant material starts taller against the building, gets shorter as it moves toward the sidewalk, so that we create a layered effect against the base of the building, and a multi-seasonal and ideally multi-colored sort of plant material, create variety along that landscape. We're trying to avoid flat sod to vertical wall. We're trying to have flat sidewalk to interesting, ever-changing, and layered, both in height and materiality, plant material, till we get to the face of the building.
What is the plant material, though? Trees, shrubs, grasses? Do you know what that is?
More grasses and shrubs than trees.
Because I see all those trees up on the north, and it looks like, and in the parking lot, but nothing there on the west side. Okay.
Like
'cause that's
Stephen had
facing-
said the utilities, all the utilities that are running under.
This, from about here to about here, basically where these, the limits to what these project, we can't put trees in that, with roots in that easement over that drainage line. So we've got this moving edge with shorter to taller plant material and varieties of grasses, shrubs, perennials, whatever other elements in here. But what's flat green over this is more typical over the easement.
What is the lighting on that west face? What kind of lighting? You have your big sign there. What's the lighting look like?
On the west face?
On the west face, yes.
The lighting on the west face is limited to the signage, and then you'll
And
see
there's-
lights from inside the building from the windows. But there's
What is the sign lighting? Is it
It was backlit from,
Is it-
yeah, backlit from inside the sign, correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
the lighting plan shows
There's no lighting.
some lighting
On the
on the northern and eastern elevation, as well as the south, I believe, in order to provide the required illumination for the pedestrian entrances into the building. Otherwise,
So, and the point of my, I mean, as Phyllis brought up, that you're coming down out of original town, down Coal Creek Drive, and we've also got a residential area right across the street from this facility, and there are homes right there, and just trying to get a sense of what they're looking at now, like the lighting in the parking, on this south side of the building, which will be visible because the Coal Creek is just offset just a little bit to the south of your parking lot there, so that just want to kind of understand what the lighting looks like if you're staring at this from
the west.
If you're west in original town looking at this building, you've got homes that are sitting there, and what are they dealing with, and
Right.
for how late at night, and all those things.
Well, what we've tried to do, and I think it's partly a result of what we've done with the orientation of the building, is that we've screened most of that well-lit parking behind the building from that perspective. There are already existing street lights, safety lights, a lot of ambient light along McCaslin now because it's such a high-traffic thoroughfare
Yep.
that we're not adding additional light. So our building will be more ambient, lit from the safety lighting and the street lighting that's already in place. We're not trying to draw attention or focus lighting or any other bright hot spots on the facade of the building. We're trying to let the glow of the showroom and the appear through those windows, as well as along the north and the east, and then have and not add anything more than that than what's there. So it'll And I think there's, as you can see, from what we've added, which is parking lot, safety lighting, we haven't taken into account the light levels of the existing pole fixtures along McCaslin now, which are pretty ample.
Okay.
So I guess I'd only add the fact that these light levels are pretty low. In fact, I had to kind of go back and get them to provide some details on a second sheet in order to clarify that we had enough illumination at their crossings.
Okay.
So for a parking lot, it's fairly minimally lit, and the impacts, as you see, especially on the elevation that you're talking about, they're all zero on the west side. So.
Any additional questions before I ask the public? Comments? All right. So, if the public has any comment, I'd like to open up for public comment. You have, if you could limit your comments to 5 minutes, and if there are comments that you heard from others that are, rather than repeat them entirely, you can certainly be supportive of them, but just sort of be respectful of time and come tell us what you think. Yep. If you give your name and address for the record.
Mike Yates, 115 6th Avenue. It's been very helpful to actually hear what's going on tonight and not just be looking at the blueprints. But it hasn't really affected the comments that I would like to make. It does. I did write down some other questions that I'll catch at the end of this. I'm here to voice my thoughts about the car dealer at the corner of McCaslin and Marshall that you're reviewing. My wife and I have been very involved and strong supporters of the concept of downtown Superior. The developer, Ranch Capital, helped us and helped our neighbors see the vision for a beautiful and unique downtown Superior 5 years ago. They had nice color sketches on vision boards of how this would evolve. On the corner of the proposed dealership, they had a vision sketched of a wonderful pond with a majestic fountain welcoming residents and visitors to the new downtown. As flood control needs changed, the vision was changed to a classy restaurant with a large deck overlooking a pond with downtown Superior as the backdrop. Imagine my surprise when I received the Planning Commission packet in my email and our beautiful vision was turned into a car dealership. But wait, many people say, this isn't a car dealership, it's Tesla. They're different. They usually are. Usually a small storefront with just a few cars, no inventory, no service center. You could not even drive a Tesla home the same day if you wanted to buy one. They're so different, it shouldn't even be called an auto dealership. If it were a car dealership, they could not be built here because sales and leases of cars, trucks, and RVs are not allowed in this location. So the applicant says, let's make an exception. We'll say we are Tesla. It almost makes sense if it were a typical Tesla dealer. This car dealership has a building that covers nearly a half acre at 22,000 square feet, 70% of which is a service area, which does not even exist in a typical Tesla dealership. It has over 1.5 acres of asphalt for car inventory, 20 spaces for employees, 45 for customers, and 107 for inventory to collect the numbers that were correct the numbers that were being thrown around here tonight. That's from your plans. Nowhere close to a typical Tesla dealer with only a few spaces and no inventory. The reality is that this is a car dealership, and this is brought to light with the old saying, if it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it is a duck. So what we're looking at here is a typical car-looking dealership. It's metal, glass, and cement building, which frankly, if that were back up here, I think looks like an airplane hangar, is crammed into the prime commercial corner in Superior. Behind it is a 1.5 acre asphalt lot that can be seen from a 360-degree view, even from the new $5+ million park that's being built in downtown Superior, adjacent to the car dealership. And I might add, my wife and I were also involved in designing those parks when they had started, and the design plans had an almost impossible time even finding the necessary parking when there was going to be a pond there. And this proposal is taking away 70% of that parking. And at least back then, there was nowhere for it to go, and still have the fields of the size that were desired. I digress. Let's look into the future. Tesla becomes very successful and needs more space, as Commissioner Ritchie mentioned. Or they fail and they vacate the space. Either way, we are left with a very unattractive building and a parking lot. We'd probably have to tear it down, or, God forbid, put in a Chevy or a Ford dealership on Superior's Prime Corner, something that you wouldn't even consider to do today. How about tax revenue? To my knowledge, if the buyer lives out of town, Superior doesn't get the taxes. Don't get me wrong, I love Teslas. I'd love to own a Tesla. This is not the place for a Tesla dealership. We need to have a viable downtown, but as currently proposed, it's not the best concept for use on that corner. As Superior residents, we need to work to beautify this corner and present a more positive image of our town. The zoning request here tonight will counter the original grand vision of our town's entrance. Please don't grant it. And let's see if I have any other things I didn't do from your conversation. Oh, I would ask, and I don't know if I can, so maybe you can. Is this dealership using its space to provide inventory holding for storefront Tesla dealers in the Denver area? And maybe that's why so much parking is needed. The tower sign is whoever asked that question, that's designed to be at the roundabout down in the Main Street entrance. The design, the sketches all show no stoplights, no street lights, no traffic on that road. That's going to present a whole different look also. I believe I've made all my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any additional public comment? Okay, going once, going twice? Okay. Let's see, where are we next? So, applicant, if you want to respond to anything that's been asked or said, you're welcome to do that if you like. Do we have any more questions? If I close the public hearing, then questions are over and any new information from staff is over. Anything else? Okay. That sound right to you, Phyllis? Close the public hearing? Okay. Public hearing is closed. Now we get to talk. Anybody want to start? Anthony? Got your finger on the button.
Well, thank you. I will. First of all, as always, thank you, the staff, Stephen, for putting together a really informative and comprehensive presentation. And also thank you to the applicant for answering the questions and being here this evening. I am going to start by saying I like this project a lot. I think that based on what we've heard this evening and the slides and then the presentation, this would be a very good addition to our community. I think that having such a forward-thinking company come to our town helps us all. I really do like the idea of having a company like this, in addition, because I believe that it'll be, as mentioned, a regional draw. I think that not only will we have people from the areas that were mentioned that are kind of our close neighbors coming to visit and use our amenities and shop at our stores and use our retail, we'll get people from farther away than just those places. So at this point, based on what I've heard and seen, I would be in support of this project?
All right, so I think Mr. Hardy and actually Commissioner Stewart, I had written down the thought of forward thinking for our town prior to the presentation, and each of you have used the same term. And I think that from my perspective, our town is a forward thinking town. We do have a lot of people who drive electric vehicles in this town, me being one. But and I think it's a great project. I still have questions about the number of parking spaces, and I think it was a great question. Is this becoming a delivery center for many of the region's other Tesla spaces? And I'd like for that to be answered when it does come to the board, if it does come to the board. That needs to be something that is answered, because I think that the amount of parking spots for this entire space is, with the Tesla brand and how cars are delivered, I just feel like this is an overabundance of parking, which eats into our town parking ability. So whether, maybe there isn't a way to utilize the parking on this project because of liability, but maybe there's a way to, offset the parking and put it in the town space. But I do think that this is a great forward-thinking project. I also do think about, from a planning commissioner standpoint, is this the best location for this? Is the old Sports Authority building, in that area, when we start looking at redevelopment of that and other places, is that an option, right? And so I'm not convinced that this corner is probably the most proper spot for it. I think it's a great location, but is it the right location in Superior for this project? Don't get me wrong, I love the way it looks, but it all comes back to the parking for me and the impact on the park and the future living for the town of Superior. It is going to be a great draw for regional, getting people to come in. It's going to be just like the sports stable, bringing in hockey players and everything. You're going to be bringing in car enthusiasts who are going to be eating at the restaurants and shopping in the stores. That's all great, but I'm having a little bit of a reservation on this particular parcel and the impact of what it has on the park.
I echo Commissioner Reese's comments. I have exactly the same feelings. I think Tesla's great. I'm super excited to see them come to the town of Superior, but I have a lot of reservations about this particular location. Just such a heavily auto-oriented use next to kind of what will be our premier park and what was intended to be, the gateway to our downtown, not necessarily like the feature Denver regional location for Tesla branding. So I think we've expressed our concerns. It doesn't sound like there's a lot of interest, I think, in I don't know if there's interest, I guess, in accommodating consideration to reduce parking, recognizing, right, it's a balance with long-term needs, as well as any architectural enhancements on that west elevation. I would love to see some additional enhancements, particularly since there's no trees. We can't have trees. There's nothing, if we had trees on that facade, I think I would feel, over time that we could add some architectural interest through the use of some trees here. Yeah, and the impact of the park long term. I really think the Planning Commission, just to note that this is, I would say, not ideal for the development of the park parcel, in my opinion.
I'd like to support my fellow commissioners, Richie and Reese, in their comments. I was also kind of shocked that there was already an agreement established back in 2017 with the board for the sale of the property. So I think that was kind of putting the cart before the horse, but that's all I'll say about that. The Sports Authority building is available. It's a large space. It does back to US 36. It does a lot of exposure back there. It's already an existing building. I think the the combination of this building next to the park, right at the entrance to our downtown Superior, is not appropriate. You know, the vision changes over time from restaurants to different things, but it's still the entrance to the downtown Superior. That will not change. And so the parking issue going into the park is an issue. There's, you know, how many spaces right along that edge there? If Tesla or the applicant wanted to, they could deed those to the town and allow that to be public parking there. That first long row of cars, parking spaces, that could be dedicated to the town and given to the parking for the park, and we could get some of that spaces back. Because you're right, we didn't have enough parking to begin with, and this doesn't help. So I have a few reservations with this, let alone the lack of the use of solar energy, whether it be PV or thermal on the property. It's kind of shocking to me. That was it. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not going to go through everything other than to echo. I was shocked a little bit with what we were going to do with this corner, because I love the idea of the park and the look coming in and having a car dealership on the corner. Just isn't what I ever envisioned and what I thought it's not what I thought we had originally planned. So I was surprised. I love the idea of Tesla. I think it's a great company, forward thinking. So all of that is good. I just agree with Commissioner Reese and others that this doesn't seem like the right location for it. But I love the idea of it. I don't like the size of this, especially where it is located. That building is gigantic, and it just seems like that is going to be what says hello to everyone who comes to downtown Superior. And is that what we want? Is that how we want to greet people? And it's not how I envisioned us greeting people. And the parking, I think, is also an issue with the park and not being the centerpiece of the town. That park was supposed to be, you know, something everyone looked at, and I think this just makes it more difficult to use that park and find parking.
I'm again, I won't repeat everything everybody said, but I'm ditto to everything that's been said, to what's been said. What's most interesting to me is that it was made a point to prohibit auto dealerships in the town center. Not that we left it out and we're, you know, looking to say, oops, we missed something, we should allow this. And if this were a little boutique shop, I'd probably be way more open to considering it. But this is a full-fledged dealership, sales and service, with 172 parking spaces. And I know it's clean, but so is Boulder Toyota. They're pristine. They look great there. But it's a dealership, and when you drive by it, you know what it is. And so I also love the idea. I think it'd be awesome to have Tesla in our town. I really do. I have no issues with the company, but I'm struggling with this spot being the place to put it. And, you know, having it on the corner that's, I mean, I know we have a kind of a Main Street circle, but the majority of our regional draw is going to come in. They're going to come in come in off the highway on McCaslin, and you know, Marshall Road is going to be a primary entrance into the town. I'm also very disappointed, you know, that the park was given up, and I know that isn't relevant to this application, but I mean, just for the town board's information, that we are impacting our park to this degree, blocking the view of the park from the entrance. Again, would love to have Tesla here. I just think this is the wrong place for it, and I'm not sure how we proceed here. We have a lot of comments and concerns that I think if we're gonna, what's that? If we're gonna, you know, work on a motion here, there are probably comments we want to make sure get to the board. I don't know if we want to formalize those or if we just want to hope that they listen and read the minutes. Any thoughts?
I think the applicant has a question.
Am I allowed to respond to
No,
the
it's
Sports Authority?
no.
Sports Authority.
No.
We looked at the Sports Authority.
Yeah, we're not.
None of it.
We've closed the public hearing, so
Okay.
well, yeah, we're not allowed to
This is the only spot that they'll
So,
go.
okay.
This is the only site that they'll look at.
So,
Well, I feel like, I mean, I don't know that we need to formalize comments. I feel like our minutes would set the record unless otherwise folks agree.
okay.
Just one more. For myself, I have less concern about the placement of this. I think that the product and what's being presented is upscale enough to still kind of send that message that this is superior, and that we expect good things for our community and good things for our town. So for me, that would have less of an impact on my decision around that. The concerns that I had have been, in my opinion, adequately addressed. Mainly the lights. I had concerns about the light pollution, and that was kind of adequately addressed. There's still opportunity for us to have monument signs there and something that reflects our downtown, and we can have that the way that we want it. So that concern has been addressed for me. So, and I think that that's still why I'm generally supportive of it. I think that it's a good enough product that it's not going to detract from what we're trying to accomplish.
And from my standpoint, like I had said, I think, it's a great product. It's a great, project. Is it the best location? No. But am I willing to live, would I support the location? If, it is, I don't know. I just keep going back and forth in my mind on the location, but really the sticking point, it's not the building on that location, it's the impact of the parking to the park. And if there was some other solution to address the parking versus the large parking lot, and whether that's, that we find out that Tesla is using this for delivery for other regional sites, and they can handle it in a different capacity and reduce the amount of the site to give back some of the parking spaces, and we figure out something that way, I'd be in support of this. It's just, that is the impact to the park is my biggest issue.
And we're just not hearing that,
Right.
from my comment, from what I.
I'd like to throw out a possible condition, would be to, prior to the application going before the town board, the west elevation would include additional architectural enhancements. I don't want to design it. I don't know necessarily what that would be, but I don't feel like enough was done. Potentially even a pedestrian entrance or something to engage the McCaslin, as I understand the design guidelines actually require. So I would propose a condition related to additional architectural enhancements.
And I would need to have a condition of addressing the parking or the size of the parking lot and the number of parking spaces, and and I know that it doesn't address the parking, but the impact of addressing the size of the lot and the parking, if that is addressed, which would allow the town or RC Superior to address the parking, I think that needs to be reviewed as well.
And I'd say in line with that condition, I mean, I don't know where that goes if it turns it into a boutique shop that we think would fit really well there on that corner, which I don't think that's not what they're proposing. So, any other thoughts? Does anybody want to? We have, and Stephen, if you could assist us there, if we just reiterate the two resolutions that we have on the table. One is a PD amendment, right?
Correct. So I don't think that you guys are, unless I'm hearing differently, the two suggestions don't apply to the PD amendment. So that you would ask for conditions to be added to the FDP specifically to address the west elevation and explore parking options. The only thing I guess I can think of is that, there might be some capacity for, and that's a tricky thing with the parking, is even if there were like some capacity to accommodate parking for the park until they grow out, like in 5 or 7 years or whatever, and actually need that. Once it's used publicly, it's hard to take back. Just so it's a difficult thing that, I mean, and we've had these conversations with the applicant through the process, and they have clarified that Tesla's requirement is 170. So I think it may just be that they come back and have a better explanation as to why they need it and a better projection. But I think that we can write that, if you want to write that somewhat loosely, just so that it's addressed better and that we explore options, and then as to whether or not if they don't need it, that we somehow have the opportunity to obtain that back. I mean, I don't know how it works. I know that a lot of people park in parking areas that are unused for whatever purpose they seem to use it for as well. So it may be a concern that doesn't materialize either. So I don't know. And then I can also tell you that, with future developments for the core of the town center, which is south of the creek, we're going to be looking at, that's where we have the flexibility of, shared parking options, and we'll have different users and a different mix of users, particularly office users, where they're going to go away and the space is going to be available, and it's in the best interest of the developer to provide those parking spaces. So, and I guess that's the other thing that I may not have, the developer looked at this application and is supportive of it for a number of reasons. But they weren't concerned about the parking, and they weren't concerned about this being the entrance into the town center. So it's something I probably should have tried to get, them to provide some sort of summary of support, and I can look to do that before the town board meeting as to the reasons why Ranch Capital is supportive of this application, beyond the fact that it's reserving there. That was the only one comment, that they wanted to make sure they got their sign. But they are supportive from a much broader perspective as well. So those are the only kind of things that I thought of, and they're not direct responses to your parking issue. I think that one is just, I don't know how far we're going to get with that conversation. It's something that we discussed through the review process before it came to the planning commission.
I think it would be interesting to know, if they bring this to the town board, for them, if they have other facilities like this around the country, how how is the parking used there? Do they have 170, and are they using 20, and has it been in place for 5 years or 6 years, or some idea of what the usage is at other facilities, so we had an idea of what they're doing. And I think the other question is it going to be a regional center for drop-offs? I think that's a big deal if that's what this facility is going to be used as. So.
It's hard to review these kind of applications in vacuums, and we do this oftentimes where we're severely impacting our park, and I think we may have some unintended consequences as far as what this is potentially restricting us in the future. We haven't seen an overlay of exactly how this is impacting it. We're eliminating essentially all, we had a right-in, right-out that folks could get off of McCaslin and enter into the park. That's now gone. We had an extra, whole lot of parking that that's now gone. And if we're shifting that impact to the south side, and my thought was the south side's supposed to be more dense. I don't want a 70-car, surface parking lot on the downtown Superior core. I mean, that's just not an ideal, it's just not an ideal use. And so potentially then, is the developer going to pay for, additional structured parking? I don't know, to accommodate all that. So yes, I understand we have shared opportunity for parking with office users, but this is just a pretty fundamental land use shift for such a highly auto-oriented use, which I just don't think is compatible next to the park.
So our choices are, a motion to approve. Sorry. So starting over, our options are we can make a motion to approve, we can make a motion to deny. It's a recommendation of the town board from the planning commission. I think our discussion, I agree, pretty much covers what our thoughts are. And again want to help just clearly understanding the two resolutions that are in front of us. Can you just hit me with those again? The PD.
Yeah, we can pull them up. So the first resolution is to approve the PD change, and that would occur first, and then we would have a resolution to approve the FDP and final plat. And this is the area where you'd want to add conditions F and G, if that's the direction you're headed.
On the site, on the
FDP changes.
What
So-
happens if the initial PD is denied? Do we vote on the second one as well, or how
None of it
does
can
impact?
happen without the PD change being
And
approved.
I'd add that in order to deny the PD. Microphone, please.
Oh, sorry.
In order to deny, if that's where you're headed, you'll need to be able to articulate how the application doesn't meet the code requirements. So the draft resolutions in your packet are anticipate approval and recite that the application has met the code requirements. In order to deny, we'll need to be able to articulate how it fails to meet the code requirements.
So is the fact that auto dealerships are prohibited by, is that not
Well, the
in
basis
the PD currently? Is that not a reason to deny?
I will pull up the. Can we get the code?
Yeah, and you can help us understand this. We'll
Sure.
agreed.
code.
We want to
Yeah.
understand this a little better.
The Westminster. Sorry.
The code for having to approve.
Yeah, can we just get the Town of Superior code?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I don't have a.
I can get there. I do it a lot. Thanks.
I can go grab a copy.
Super. Court, no. Sorry. It's hard typing when the whole room is watching. Is there a link on the website, Phyllis? Yeah.
To About Us, clear over here, in Superior Municipal Code under Publications.
Thank you. Okay, so the criteria for, if you want to look in your packets, the draft resolution cites section 161030 C5, which outlines the criteria for amending a PD. So it's treated as a new plan, meaning it has to meet the criteria for approval of a new PD plan. And the approval criteria are here. So the application is complete, the project is in the best interest of the town, the project does not place an extraordinary financial burden on the town, and the intent of applicable town ordinances, comprehensive plan, and other policies are met. So you would need to couch the denial in terms of one of these criteria not being met.
So would that be, so 1, 2, and potentially, so 4, the intent of the applicable town ordinances, comprehensive plan, and other policies is met. So is the documentation of the auto dealerships being prohibited fall under policies then?
Well, it's the prior PD plan. I don't know that it, I mean, it certainly shows the intent at the time,
Okay.
but I don't know that it, I mean, the whole point of revising it is that you have presumably a new intent. So I don't know that that's.
Could we articulate?
I got it, thanks.
Could we articulate that potentially that this application does not meet criterion 2, which this application is not in the best interest of the town because it would be approving a land use that's not compatible with that particular location?
That would certainly be up to you.
I mean, would that be sufficient from a finding perspective?
Right.
I don't know if we're going to do this. I just want
Just off, right.
Yeah, we just want to understand.
Sure, it does successfully tie the denial to a code provision.
Yeah, right. Okay. And I don't know where we are. Does somebody want to take a crack at this motion? I looked at Trustee Ritchie if she would be willing
really
to try
torn
that,
on
but
this
we're
one.
fine. Or a motion to approve, whichever
I'm
now
really torn
we
on
know
this
our
one.
options. We have our motion to approve based on what's been recommended by staff, and we've gotten guidance on if we want to deny this.
Well, I think maybe we start with, I mean, we can vote either way, right? So we're not tied one way or the other based on whatever our motion is. But let's start with the motion maybe as the recommendation from staff and start there. And if that passes, then we're good. And if not, then maybe we could craft a motion for denial. So I would make a motion to approve resolution
So do I have the right?
PC2. Yeah.
PC2, Series 2018, resolution of the Planning Commission of the Town of Superior recommending approval of a fourth amendment to the plant development plan for Superior Town Center in case PDA 2018-1. And this one would have no conditions, is that right?
Yeah.
One.
Just the
A.
standard.
Just the
one
standard,
that you
sorry.
said.
The condition as proposed by staff.
All right, so there's a motion on the table. Is there a second? Okay.
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Reese. All in, let's see, do we have discussion? Or
Sure,
no?
yeah,
Is there any
discussion.
discussion on this? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
We have Commissioner Stewart and Commissioner Reese and Commissioner Malia. Opposed?
Aye.
3.
We have 3. Yep. Commissioner McCool. Who? Commissioner Whitty. Okay, Commissioner Ritchie. So we had a tie? Or,
No.
Or did it pass?
4 to 3.
It was what? I'm sorry?
4 to 3.
Passed. Okay. All right.
So then moving on, I would propose a motion to recommend approval of resolution number PC-3, Series 2018, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the Towns of Superior recommending approval of Superior Town Center filing 1B replat number 6, and the final development plan for an electric vehicle sales and service stations numbers FDP-2018-2 and FP-2018-2. In addition to the conditions included by staff in the resolution, I would propose a condition recommending that the applicant provide additional architectural detail on the west elevation in order to more completely meet the intent of the design guidelines.
And I would also like to add a condition that the applicant provide detailed information on the parking spaces, expected usage of parking spaces, whether it is for regional sales delivery, and any additional information that can be provided regarding the parking and the impact to the park. Does that make sense?
So that's you're just asking for them to provide information, or but no requirement to do anything, or just provide.
I guess a requirement to provide detailed information to the town board regarding all of the parking, I guess, parking usage expectations for the project. And
Okay.
that will provide the board the information, and after reading our notes, they...
Gotcha. Okay. All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I second.
Any more discussion on this motion?
Can I confirm with the attorney, we're not restricted on voting yes on this if we voted no on the PD amendment, correct?
Correct.
We want to get the
No
conditions-
restriction.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right, all in favor? We have 5, yep. Commissioner Stewart, Ritchie, Amalia, and, and Jason. And opposed?
Yeah.
Yeah, McCool and Woody.
Okay.
So that motion passes. All right, I think we're done. Right?
Yeah.
Yep, okay, thank you. So this, oh no, we closed that public hearing, so.
Yeah, right.
All right, I'm going to give them a minute to break up and give us staff announcements.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I don't think so. Thank you, guys. Okay. Staff announcements, or I guess we'll wait for
Yeah,
Commissioner
staff
Stewart to
announcements
return.
next. Or yeah, we can wait for Anthony.
Did you have to head out?
I'm okay.
Okay, so far so good, huh?
Yeah, they're still talking.
By the skin of
Do you
your
have
teeth.
enough? Oh wait, well, sorry, we're waiting
We have.
for
I
Commissioner
mean, I can
Stewart.
update Commissioner Stewart after the meeting too. We'll have a meeting on the 3rd. Get to turn around another
Okay.
memo to you guys in 2 weeks' time on a residential development application for blocks 14 and a portion of block 26. So block 14 is southwest, of Village Green Park within, so it's south of block 25. And we have a block 25 application that's under review too. So the context of everything should be fairly clear by the time we get to your meeting. But it's Thrive Development coming in with FDP for 51 townhomes, if my memory serves me. It's hard to dive in and out of these applications. 51 townhomes, yeah. So, and they're the green builder that presented concept plan to the board over the summer, I believe. So, and then we are making progress. We had a meeting with Clarion Associates yesterday, just kind of starting to kind of work out a time frame. They're going to start their kind of legwork and then come back to, I think we're shooting for the second meeting in April for them to come and kind of give you preliminary, direction and path forward and get your comments and feedback before they do kind of the first wave of neighborhood outreach in May. So that, if I'm doing my math correctly, would be the 3rd, the 17th of April. We would meet with Clarion for planning. So the next 2 planning commission meetings are set regardless, one of which is a development application and one at minimum is an update from Clarion. So I don't know if you guys have any questions on any of that. Commissioner Stewart, I think before you came back in, we will have a development application 2 weeks from now to review as well from Thrive concerning a townhome product within block 14 and a portion of block 26. So kind of moving south from southeast from what we saw for Discovery, but within the town center, right adjacent to the Village Green Park that kind of is the terminus of, it splits Promenade as you head south. So we have applications in for the 2 blocks that are primarily abut the core area of downtown, one of which is under construction, and then we have the other half of block 25 on the other side of Promenade, and then this is just south of that.
So regarding our meeting with Clarion, so I do have an expectation we'll have an opportunity to work with them to understand what the steps are. Is this, be able to provide feedback,
Yes.
comment, and sort of drive this process. So this first meeting, is this an initial meeting? Is it a work session type meeting? Or?
Yeah, it's a work session kind of update on their initial, my understanding, and Martin's here, he was at the meeting too. He's probably had more conversations with Darcy lately than I have been able to. They're going to do the first blush of what they, like their research, and then come back to us with some additional information that will inform the next step of the process. So we'll have clearer information to provide to people and more direct questions to ask, whereas it was kind of broad brush. So we're going to take it'll be a little bit more delving into it. Martin, you can save me here if you have a better way of explaining this. If you're still awake back there.
Well, but part of my point is, the board's made it
Yeah.
clear in our staff dinner that,
it's a
direct involvement in where this process goes and how
right.
it goes.
There's not any
just
decisions making.
Don't
There's
want
just
anything happening
formulating
without, since we haven't
and
had a
what we've had
discussion.
conversations with about mostly is just strategy on time frames, and
Okay.
us knowing that we don't want to have public outreach meetings over the summertime. We want to try to get them in, when people aren't going to be out on vacation, so we can involve as many people as we can. So it'll be before the school break, and then the second wave is kind of towards the end of August, early September, when people are traditionally back from vacation, so that
Okay.
we get as much public involvement as we can. So that's the crux of the conversation right now,
Okay.
is the schedule. And they'll outline that and then kind of outline their steps in terms of doing the market analysis and that type of stuff. So
Okay.
that's what they'll touch base with you on.
And then lastly, have there been any permits pulled or anything else going on in town? That we
A
should
lot of
have
inquiries
asked?
on
A lot of inquiries,
the
just that.
sites that you guys have noticed, but no permits
Okay.
pulled.
Okay.
So.
Anybody have anything else? All right, then we're adjourned. Thank you.